Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. How are you today? Fine, very good. Okay, today inshallah we'll be talking about the change in market equilibrium. The change in market equilibrium. As we mentioned before, that the equilibrium in the market occurs when demand crosses supply curve, or there is an intersection between demand and supply. Now, let's study the changes in the market equilibrium due to the change in demand and supply. Okay? Now, let's assume that we are talking about the market here, want prices, demand one, supply one. And let's talk about the demand for shirts, or demand for trousers, or demand for shoes in the local market. Okay? So we're talking about this is the equilibrium point 1, and this is the price P1. Here we're talking about the demand for, or demand and supply for shoes. Quantity 1. So our topic is the change in market equilibrium. Here we're talking about the shoes market, the shoes goods, or, okay, thank you. So, according to our assumption here, that the equilibrium point in this market is A1, the demand for shoes is illustrated by this demand curve, D1, and the supply for shoes is supply 1. If you remember that we studied the demand determines and supply determines. Like the demand determines like the consumer, the number of consumers or population, the consumer's income, taste, and the preferences. What else? The price of other related goods and expectations for futures, for future prices and future, the future income. Okay? Now, let's gonna study what will happen to the equilibrium prices and equilibrium quantity if the number of population of the population increase. Let's assume that in one area, the population increases. What will happen? The population here is one of the main determinants of demand. So demand will increase. So here we have rightward shifting. So demand will increase, because here we're talking about the demand is a normal good. The number of population increases, the demand for shoes increase. So the demand curve shifts right. They say demand curve shifts right. So here we have rightward shifting for demand curve to D2, parallel to the previous one. What do you see? As demand increases, we have a new equilibrium point in the market, which is E2 here. The price goes up or increase from P1 to P2, and the quantity, the equilibrium quantity in the market goes up as well. All right? So, the conclusion or the result here is we have a rightward shifting in demand curve leads to and increasing the prices, the equilibrium price, and increasing the equilibrium quantity, the quantity exchange in the market goes up. Okay? Is there a problem? No. Okay. Let's assume that we have populated the consumer's income. And here we are talking about the shoes are, so here, let's talk about the consumer's income goes up. What will happen to the demand for shoes here? Not always, because it might be you're talking about the second-hand shoes. صح؟ مظبوط؟ إذا بنحكي عن new shoes هذا الماركت تبعه ماله؟ Definitely income will affect positive effect على مين؟ على new shoes. But what about the second-hand shoes? Goes down. Then income هنا the consumer's income goes up. If we are talking about a new shoes market industry, إذا هذا كان new shoes industry, definitely راح يكون في عندنا هيك أو يعني هذا normal good. هذا يعني إذا كانت هذه normal good. And if the shoes here are normal, what will happen? Demand goes up. So demand curve, demand for shoes goes up, and the demand curve shifts right. So we will find that there is a rightward shifting in demand curve. But what will happen if this product is inferior? Like, you know, here we're talking about the second-hand shoes. If the shoes here is مش يعني ما بنحكي في شيء new، بنحكي في second-hand shoes. تمام؟ شو اللي راح يصير؟ هذا let us assume that the shoes here is the type of shoes, the second-hand shoes. اللي هو المستعمل هذا. Increasing in income, the consumer's income, leads to what? The decreasing the demand for shoes. So the demand curve for shoes here will shift left. So we will find that the demand for shoes here shifts left. So let us assume that here we have the original equilibrium point. This is the second hand for shoes market. Demand 1, S1, E1, P1, Q1. Here we're talking about the second hand shoes market. As the consumer's income goes up, the demand for the second-hand shoes goes down. Here we have a leftward shifting of demand curve because there is a negative relationship between what? Between the consumer's income and the inferior goods. All right? So here we have, because the second-hand clothes here, the second-hand shoes is ماله هذا an inferior good. And there is a negative relationship between the consumer's income and the demand for inferior goods. So the demand shifts left. So here we have a leftward shifting in demand curve to D2, parallel to the previous one. Here we have a leftward shifting and demand curve we have a new equilibrium point. طبعا the analysis here assume that ceteris paribus means كل العوامل الثانية ثابتة. ولا حاجة تغيرت إلا مين؟ الكونسيومر's income. Okay? So we have a new equilibrium point, demand 2 with supply 1. Because supply did not change here. What is there a problem? Where is it? Inferior good. Inferior means سلعة رديئة. Okay? And there is a negative relationship between the consumer's income and the demand for inferior goods. Yes? Is there a problem? Okay. So, here we have the leftward shifting in demand curve. We have a new intersection point here, E2, and this is the price P2. The quantity exchange in the market is a Q2. What will happen here? So the result here is, increasing in the consumer income leads to a decreasing in demand for second-hand shoes. The conclusion or the result here is a decrease in the price, a plus decreasing in the quantity exchange in the market, or the market equilibrium. This is the result here. Okay? So the conclusion, the result here is we have a decreasing in the prices, decreasing in the equilibrium quantity. What will happen if the consumer's income decreases in this case? The demand for shoes, here, second-hand shoes goes up because there's a negative relationship between the consumer's income and the demand for, the second-hand shoes. The demand curve shifts right. The opposite case here, demand will shift right, so the price goes up, the equilibrium quantity goes up as well. Okay? Tamam? What about the taste and the preferences? If the consumer's taste and the preferences go toward, buying one type of shoes, or we're talking about fashion here, the consumer's taste and preferences go toward to buy something, one type of the products here, one type of shoes. Here, demand goes up, demand shifts right, so the price goes up and the demand goes up as well. The quantity exchange in the market goes up as well. صح؟ بمعنى انه لو الاذواق تبعت الناس راحت باتجاه السلعه هذه. Taste and the preferences. التيست and the preferences تفضيلات المستهلكين and the preferences راحت باتجاه زادت، يعني راحت باتجاه one type of shoes، نوع معين من الشوز. شو بصير؟ demand بيزيد. The price demand curve shifts right, and we will write or shift right. We have a right word shifting in demand curve. Okay, and here we can apply all these things on all demand determinants. Okay, يعني بتقدر تمسكي كل الديماند determinants وتعملي applications عليه وتشتغلي وتشوف الديماند shifts right or left. Okay, تمام؟ مين مش فاهمه؟ فيش حد كلام الامور تمام. طيب, let's go to analyze the supply determinants. Let's study the effect of a change in one of the supply determinants on the market equilibrium. If we have a new technology to produce shoes, as a suppliers, as producers, as a sellers, as sellers, as producers, as suppliers, let us assume that they have a new technology. What will happen to their production, their ability to produce, their willingness to produce, their profits, the supply here? What will happen? Yeah, definitely. So let us go to analyze, or this is the original situation, quantity, prices, and this is the demand for shoes, D1, S1, E1, price, P1, Q1. According to our assumption here is that the producers or the industry here have a new technology. So F, the sellers or the producers have a new technology. Modern technology, modern machinery. Huh? What will happen here? Increasing what? Supply. You're talking about the supply's determinants. Because technology is one of the main effects, or the main factors affect what? Supply. Technology is one of the variables or the factors of one of the main determinants of supply. So as we have a new technology, the production capacity will increase. The ability to produce goes up. The willingness to produce goes up. So here we have, this will increase supply. So this increase our production capacity. The ability to produce goes up. So supply goes up. So here we have rightward shifting in supply curve. Supply of shoes goes up. So here we have rightward shifting in supply curve. So supply shifts right. So here we have rightward shifting ceteris paribus. ما بقى الأمور كلها لحالها. Supply shifts right. This is S2. We have a new equilibrium point. S2 with D remains constant. Demand curve remains constant here. So we have a new equilibrium point, E2. The price goes down and the quantity exchange goes up, Q2. هذا واضح لأنه لما العرض بيزيد, when supply increases in the market, the price goes down, will exchange quantity in the market بتزيد. صح؟ هي هيك. So this leads to a decreasing the prices and increasing the quantity exchange or the equilibrium quantity in the market. تمام? Oh. So the result here is decreasing the prices, the market prices or the equilibrium prices, plus increasing and the equilibrium quantity. That's it. Okay? Who has a problem here? What will happen if the cost of raw material that enters or enter in the production process of shoes here, the cost of inputs, the cost of raw material, شو بصير؟ لما بيزيد الكوست of inputs, raw material اللي بتدخل في تصنيع الشوز هذا, supply goes down. صح؟ Decreases. So let's have another example or another determinant of supply, which is the cost of raw material. If the cost of raw material increases, this means that the production prices, the production of shoes becomes more expensive. The producers will gain less profits. صح? What will happen? Their ability to produce goes down. Their willingness to produce goes down as well. So this means, or this leads to a decreasing in supply for shoes. So supply curve shifts left. So here we have a leftward shifting in supply curve. So this leads to a leftward shifting in supply curve for shoes. Price, quantity, D1, S1, E1, P1, Q1. Now, according to our assumption here that the cost of raw material goes up, so we have a leftward shifting and supply curve. The price goes up and the quantity goes down. وهذا logical analysis. As the cost of raw material goes up, هلا بدي اعمل compensation، بدي اعمل تعويضات اللي هو البروديوسر عشان اعوض ايش بسوي؟ برفع السعر تلقائيا. صح؟ Actually, the quantity produced goes down as well. So the result here will be increasing the prices. So the price, in this case, the price goes up, the quantity goes down. All right? What else? What are the other determinants of supply or the factors that affect supply? What else? So who can give us the determinant, one of the supply's determinant to be discussed here in an example or to be reflected in this example? Taxes, yeah, okay. If the government increased taxes, so let us assume that if the government increased the taxes here, or the tax rates in this industry, what will happen? This leads to increasing the cost of production. The cost of a production. As the cost of production goes up, the ability to produce goes down, the willingness to produce goes down, so supply shifts goes down. Here we have a leftward shifting and supply curve. So supply curve for shoes in this case goes or shifts left. Okay? Tamam? And vice versa. If the government increased or provided subsidies or subsidized the producers, the opposite case, if the government increased its subsidies for, so you're not taxes, you're talking about subsidies. Support for the producers. The cost of production goes down, the supply for shoes increase, so the supply curve shifts right. Subsidies means support, financial support maybe, so, or in kind sometimes. So in this case, supply will shift right. So we'll go from S1 to S3 here. To E3, what will happen here? The price goes down from P1 to P3, and the quantity goes up. So the result here will be a rightward shifting in supply curve from S1 to S3. Right? So the price goes down and the quantity exchange goes up. So the result here will be a decreasing in the equilibrium price, a plus increasing in the equilibrium quantity. Okay? Tamam? Okay. Let's go to something else. Now, as we mentioned, that we have some yes. حاضر. At this point here, according to our assumption that the government decided to subsidize the producers, the sellers, the factories, the industry here to produce more shoes in the market. So they might give them financial support, maybe providing them with cash for work, with workers, to pay wages for workers sometimes, to decrease the cost of raw material by decreasing the customs maybe. What will happen? The cost of production goes down, supply of shoes goes up. So here we have a rightward shifting and supply curve. You know that the price went down and the equilibrium quantity increased. Okay? Clear? Tamam. Let's go to something else. Now, we studied the effects of the change in one determinant on the demand, and another side, we studied the effects of the change in one of the main supplies determinants on the market equilibrium. Now, I will put the other graph to study it changes in demand and supply at the same time. Before, we studied what? The change in demand as a loan on the market equilibrium, either to decreasing in demand or increasing in demand, shifting in demand, shifting right or left. And we studied the change in equilibrium prices and equilibrium quantity. Then we went to supply, and we studied what? The change in supply alone, either to increase or decrease. Now we will study both in one graph. Sometimes, let's come back to the example. Sometimes one of the demand determinants changes, and at the same time, one of the supply's determinants changes as well. What will happen to the market equilibrium? Here's the idea. So here, let's study the changes in demand and supply at the same time. Okay? So let us assume here that we have the original situation. Here, the original situation. Q, price, demand for shoes, supply one of shoes, E1, P1, Q1. And we will assume that you're talking about the new modern of shoes. New shoes. Here, we're not talking about a second-hand shoes. Okay? We are talking about the new shoes. هذا في الإكزامبل عندي هذا new shoes. We have two assumptions. The consumer's income increases. So according to our assumption here, that the consumer's income increased by 30%. The consumer's income increased by 30%. يعني فجأة جت الحكومة ايش سوت؟ قالت خذوا هاي increasing في الانكم في السالاريز في الويجز whatever انه هذا تمام؟ and at the same time بلس هذا مشي معاه بالتوازي تواكبوا decreasing or increasing the cost of raw material. اللي بتدخل في صناعات الشوز by 50%. شو بصير؟ What will happen here in this case? تعرفيش؟ شو اللي بشوف؟ The first part affect what? The consumer's income affect what? Demand. Decreasing or increasing? Increasing in the consumer's income leads to increasing in demand. صح؟ By 30%. تمام؟ طب هذا increasing the raw material here. Exactly, supply goes down by 50%. Then, and the two parts here, the first part is increasing in income by 30%. هذا الجزء. Affect demand by 30%. So, the first part here, increasing in income, increase demand by 30%. Plus, increasing the cost of raw material leads to a decreasing ability to produce or increase or decrease, then had a decreased supply by 50%. هذا leftward shifting by 30%, rightward shifting by 30%, وهذا leftward shifting or shifts left by 50%. بعد هيك شوف القراءة شو راح تعطيك أنا مش عارف I don't know يعني maybe إنه the prices go up. إذا هنا هيك مين مش فاهم لحد هنا؟ Here we're analyzing the effects of two variables. One of them affect demand and the second affect supply. We will study the effects or the effects of a change in the consumer's income and a change in the cost of raw material on the market, the equilibrium market prices and equilibrium quantity. Okay? This is the original situation here. According to our assumption here, that the consumer's income goes up by 30%. This leads to increasing demand by 30% as well. So, here we have rightward shifting in supply is a demand curve. So demand increased by 30%, so demand shifts right by 30%. هذا هيك supply curve shifts left by 50%. شفت الاناليسيس كيف؟ طيب إذا هنا هيك demand will shift right by 30%. Let us assume that this is D2 and this area can be measured by 30%. The magnitudes of a change in demand here is 30%. The magnitudes of a change in demand here is 30%. And the supply curve shifts left by 50%. So let's draw here. The leftward shifting in supply is 50%, which should be greater than the magnitudes of a change in demand here. So the magnitudes here of a change in supply must be bigger than or greater than the magnitudes of a change in demand. Here, this area or this distance about 30%, here this distance about 50%. So the magnitudes here of a change in supply, this is S2. We have a new equilibrium point, which is, or at which supply curve, the new supply curve intersects the new demand curve. So here we have the new equilibrium point. Here the magnitudes equal 30%. The magnitudes here equals 50%. Right? So here we have a new equilibrium point, which is A2, at which supply 2 intersects demand 2. Okay? So here we have what? The result will be Q2 decline and the price goes up. Yeah. Tamam? So here the result will be increasing the prices plus decrease in the quantity, the equilibrium quantity. This is the result here. Okay? What will happen if the assumptions here changed to be 30% increasing in the consumer's income and the cost of raw material increased by 10%, which means that the magnitudes of a change in the consumer's income is bigger than the magnitudes of a change in the cost of raw material. The same here. Demand will go up by 30%. Supply declined by 10% only. So here demand shifts right by 30%. This supply curve shifts by 10%. And let us study the case here. Let's come back to the case here. The result can increasing for prices and declining in the quantity, equilibrium quantity. Here, what will happen? Let's analyze the case here. It's a different case. It's a different case. So, Q, price, D1, S1, E1, P1, Q1. Demand shifts right by 30%. So here we have, right, we're shifting in supply curve by 30%, right? Okay. To D2, the magnitudes of a change in demand here is 30%. Is bigger than the magnitudes of change in supply, which declined by 10%. So here's S2. The magnitudes of a change in supply is less than the magnitudes of a change in demand. So here we have a new equilibrium point, E2. The price goes up and the quantity equilibrium or equilibrium quantity goes down. Sorry, increases as well. Yeah. So in this case, the price goes up and the quantity goes up as well. So in this case, the price increased plus increasing the quantity. So if, or later on بروح للresults والconclusions. But now let us assume that the consumer's income increased by 30%. At the same time, the cost of raw material, which affects supply, increased by 30%. We have the same changes, percentage change in demand equals the percentage change in supply. Let's check the case here. ايش استويتوا ولا ايش؟ ايه؟ طب خلص بعطيكم المجال تكتبوا زي ايه؟ طب ما انتوا احكوا، ما حدش بيحكي. فاهمين فاهمين ايش اسوي؟ بعدين عندك الفيديو بترجعي له لو في فيش مشكله حخليه. اوكي. وين؟ يعني لما خليت هذا 10%؟ هذا كان 10% هيك مظبوط 10%. طيب وين مشكلتك؟ assumption another case. هذا كيس ثاني ملوش علاقه في الاول اللي قبله. لا كيف؟ الاسامبشن كان انه الكونسيومرز انكم زاد ب 30%. تمام؟ وبالتالي اثر على الديماند ب 30%. صح؟ صح؟
بس مجرد انه يعني تغير في هذه النسبه.
وهذا كمان تغير بس بقديش؟ زاد ب 10%. تأثير هذا relative magnitudes of a change or the change the percentage change in demand صارت أكبر من percentage change في supply. كانت قبل أقل. صح؟ مظبوط؟ مظبوط ولا شوف انك مظبوط تمشي ما مظبوطش معي انا. مظبوط بدك تكوني فاهمه. هلا هنا هيك شوف. هيو هذا هيك. ايه؟ لا لازم تفهم. شوف قصة انك ما تفهميش هذه انا قصة كبيرة عندي انه تطلع من محاضرتي مش فاهمة. بدك تطلعي فاهمة غصبا عنك، غصبا عن امك كمان. فخليني ارجع للنقطة هان. ماشي؟ هلا نيجي هيك ناخذ something else يعني ناخذ change في البوبوليشن عشان تفهموا. Population goes down. Then هذا another case. ما هي جاي لها هي النقطة. إذا نفس الشيء بس برجع للاست كيس هذا بعدين أعمل أناليسيس ثاني ل يعني some other points. Then هنا the consumer's income increased by 30%. At the same time, the cost of raw material كنا حاطينه increase ولا ايش كنا عاملينه؟ Increasing by 30%. What will happen? As the consumer's income goes up by 30. ركز معي انت هذا اللي سألت السؤال. What will happen to demand? By how much? إذن هذا this leads to the increasing demand by 30%. And what will happen to supply? ليش؟ لأنه increasing the cost of production. هذا shifts right هذا shifts left by 30% both. مظبوط؟ نيجي نشوف هيك الجراف. Q price D1 S1 E1 P1 Q1. What will happen? Demand shifts right by 30%. Demand هاي demand shifts right by 30%. بالتقريب هيك to D2 by 30%. And supply, what will happen to supply here? Decline by 30%, leftward shifting a supply curve by 30%, maybe هذه المسافة قد هذه المسافة is 2. E2 P2, the quantum remains constant, unchanged. Huh? This means what? Or in this case, the magnitudes. إذن هذا في هذا الكيس 3 حالات البرايسز go up، مرة الكوانتي بيزيد، مرة بينقص، مرة remains constant. This depends on the case itself here. The price increased. The quantity remains constant in this case. تمام؟ تمام ولا مش تمام؟ طيب خدوا بريك دقيقتين. Okay. Let's go to another example here. Or we will select 2 other variables or determinants. One on affect demand, another one affects supply. And we will study the effects on the market equilibrium. Let us assume that in an area there is a war and many population passed away, died. بصير ولا بصيرش؟ war صار في اجتياح لمنطقة. Number population goes down. So many population passed away. So the population goes down due to the war, due to killing so many people here. And at the same time, the government increased subsidies, or the population declined by 40%. At the same time, the government decided or subsidized the producers. Here we have subsidies for the producers. For the producers by 20%. What will happen? What will happen here? Yes, you can answer the questions.
by 40%.
Exactly, yeah.
Demand decreased by 40%.
Exactly, yeah.
بعدك subsidies for producer لأنه حطها زادها ب 20. Then the supply
increases by
20.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
بعدك بصير demand shift right.
Yeah.
And
Left.
supply
Left. Left, yes. And here, right. تمام. This is the case number 1 here. So, as the population goes down, so your demand goes down by 40%. Plus, the government subsidizes. Yes. Subsidies means, yeah, the government provided subsidies for the producers. What will happen to their ability to produce? What happened to their capability to produce? What is the effect of this change or these subsidies on the production? Yeah, it will increase. Because here talking about, we are studying the effect of subsidies. Yeah? So subsidies will increase supply. By 20%. So هذا shifts left by 40% plus هذا shifts right by 20%. So Q price D1 S1 E1 P1 Q1. تعال اعمليها بس ب another color. What is your assumption here? Yeah. No, decline. Yes. By how much?
By 40%.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. 40%.
Shift right by 20%. Shift right.
Is there a problem? Is there a problem here? Who can give us an advice here? Sorry. Look at. What do you see here? No. It's good analysis, but there is, or the magnitudes of a change in demand should be larger than the magnitudes of a change in supply here. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes. Two. Yeah. تمام. How do you see? Here, this is the original. Okay? The magnitudes of a change in supply, increasing in supply, is less than the magnitudes of a change in demand. Plus مش واضحة هنا. It's unclear. فبدنا نعيدها سريعا اللي تكون مبينة أن ال change في the quantity change في السبلاي. Sorry, the prices. Okay? Thank you very much indeed. شكرا كثير. يعني ممتاز. مع بعض هاي صار في عندنا شوية حاجات. Okay. Let's draw the case here. Q price D1 S1 E1 P1 Q1. According to our assumption here, that demand shifts left by 40%. Demand shifts left by 40%. حاولوا تكبروا الأمور هيك عشان الأمور يعني to be clear. D2 by 40%. And supply goes up by 20%. بمعنى هاي supply goes up by 20. خليه أصغر. To S2. The same result اللي أنت وصلتي لها. The price هيو we have a new equilibrium E2. The price goes down and the quantity goes down as well. ست كانت قريبة كثير لكيو عندي الحين. طبعا هذا برجع لشيء اسمه price elasticity of demand. راح نشوفه على supply. Okay, so the result here will be declining in prices plus declining in quantity. Another case with the same determinants of demand and supply. Let us assume that the population goes up by 40%. And the government provided subsidies for the producers by 20%. The same. نشوف الكيس. تعال شوف إذا بتقدر تعمليها. مش عارف. I don't know. You have to do the analysis here and reach the results. هي هذا وشوف الازرق هذا. خلينا نمسح.
بما انه البوبيوليشن زاد يبقى الديماند حيزيد.
اوكي.
باي
40%. Yeah, nice, perfect.
هنا is
Subsidies for the producers increase supply, yeah, by 20%. Nice, perfect. Demand shifts, right?
by 40%.
Supply shifts where? Right. Right, yeah. By 20%. Yeah, perfect. غمق الخط بس إذا كان. Yeah. S1, D1. Prices. Quantity. E1.
equilibrium E1.
What? E1, yeah. Where's the equilibrium point? Where's the equilibrium point? E1. Yeah. Shifts, right, by 40%. Yeah, by 40%. Yeah, perfect. What is it? What is the another line here? D2, yeah. Shifts, right, by how much? By 20%. صح كلامها. By 20%, by 40%. Yeah, yeah. Where's the new equilibrium? Yes. E2. Yeah, what has happened here? Price increased, yeah? So the main result here will be increasing in prices and equilibrium quantity. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks. What will happen if the population increased by 40% and subsidies increased by 40% as well? بدكم تشوفوا الريزلت. تمام؟ عندكم نشوف اشي ثاني بنعمله هيك. لا assignment واجب. homework. قديش ضايل في المحاضرة؟ طيب we still have a long time. لا نعمل كيس وبعدين نعملكم assignment. تثبيت معلومات ولا تاخذوا assignment وخلاص. يعني فاهمين؟ طيب. So here the relative magnitudes of a change in demand and supply determines the outcome of market equilibrium. هيدا إذا فهمتوا. وأنا متأكد. The relative magnitudes of a change in demand and supply determines the outcome of market equilibrium. صح؟ أنا متأكد. طيب. So the result here, or what will happen if the demand changes and supply changes? What will happen to the market, the equilibrium prices and the quantity? What will determine the changes in demand or the equilibrium prices and equilibrium quantities? The relative magnitudes of a change in demand and supply determines the outcome of market equilibrium. This is what I said.
Determination of supply and demand which change.
Yeah. بيسموها the relative magnitudes of a change in demand and supply determines the outcome of market equilibrium. بمعنى مقدار التغير اللي بيصير في الديماند والسبلاي هو اللي بيحدد طبعا الاتجاه كمان اللي هو التشينج في الماركت ايكوليبريم. تمام؟ هذا اللي بتطلعوا فيه يعني. تكونوا طبعا فاهمين كل هذا هيك. تمام؟ طيب. Let's go here to the assignment. Let us assume that the price of meat increased by 40%. Yeah. And the price of meat or beef increased by 40%. And at the same time, fresh meat. The price of a fresh meat increased by 40%. And at the same time, the cost of forage for chicken, the price of forage or fodder for chicken the cost of forage or fodder سعر العلف اللي بربوا فيه الدجاج هذا for chicken increased by 30%. What will happen to the demand for chicken? What will happen to the market equilibrium of a chicken? The equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity of a chicken. The equilibrium price and the quantity of a chicken. طبعا انا بحكي في التشيكنز ماركت. هذا التشيكنز ماركت. تمام؟ في كل عافيه.